Well, hello there, lovelies. I'm Syrinx. I'm a cosplayer, TTRPG player, and a LARPer, and today I'm going to tell you a little story about a medieval LARP I went to. Before I get into anything else, if you don't know what LARPing is, LARP stands for Live Action Role Playing. Basically, it's dressing up and playing pretend for adults. You get together for an evening, a weekend, or even longer to tell and experience an immersive story together. And today I'm going to tell you about my experience at Epos, which is a medieval fantasy campaign LARP held once a year and organized by the non-profit organization called Eternica. Also, fun fact, this was the first weekend LARP I ever went to about 3 years ago. So before I get into telling you the actual story about what happened during the LARP, I want to preface this by saying I had the most amazing weekend ever. I was kind of nervous because it was the first time being a player again after years of only being an NPC at LARPs here. So I was kind of nervous in a way to go and tell my own story again, make my own decisions fully, and bear the consequences of those. There's really just something so different about being a player versus an NPC where you do not know what is going to happen, literally. Before I tell you the story about this weekend, you need to know a little bit about who you're actually going to be following. I played my character called Lilian, who is a sorcerer and a necromancer. This character wasn't my own to begin with though. About 2 years ago, I played her as an NPC at a previous Epos event, and I fell in love playing this character, which really made me make the decision to start playing at this LARP and take this NPC character, make it my own, write another backstory for her, and turn it into a player character. So I decided to become a player at the LARP. I gave her a new life, and this was the first time I got to play her. So let's get into it. We start off Friday evening, where Lilian arrives at the location with her necromancy teacher, Jonathan. They had been traveling together for a little while because they were coming here for the same reason, namely the death of you could call him the monarch, basically, of the realm called Eternica. So Mark Onschuld was his name. He died, and it was all over the newspapers, and everyone got an invitation to come and greet him for his final travels to the Styx and the world beyond. Technically, Mark does rule Eternica with 2 other people, but he was kind of the de facto monarch of it all, kind of the de facto leader of it all. We come to this place, Moerseinde, to pay our respects to Mark, who has died, and Jonathan and Lilian travel together. Arriving there, Lilian was ecstatic to reunite with a bunch of people that she had been traveling with before, and are actually the reason she left her hometown. She had been stuck there doing some duties where she wasn't certain if this was going to be her future. She really felt stuck until a group of adventurers came by to help solve a problem, and in the process of doing that, she began to like them, and they are actually the reason why she decided to move away from her hometown and explore the wide world out there. So within this group, we had Pira, Wolf, Ton, Virgilius, Jasper, and Ra. And most importantly, Lilian shares a religion, kind of, with Ton and Ra. And Virgilius also kind of got wrapped up into it. Through this religion and through stuff that happens that I will explain later on, Lilian kind of got this brother and sister bond with Ra specifically. So she looks up to him as a big brother. So she was super happy to see him back, give him a big hug, and I mean, yeah, they were waiting in line to go see the corpse of a monarch, but that didn't matter to her at that moment. She was just very happy to see everyone again and introduce them to her necromancy teacher. Once they got inside, they went and paid their respects. Honestly, Lilian didn't really get it all that much because she believes that by being dead, you're closer to the gods and the things you worship. So people should be happy for you to be dead and not cry about you being gone. But, you know, she put up her best show and went up to the coffin, gave the coffin a hug because she didn't really know what to do, and went to pay her respects to the family. She goes to the inner courtyard and they have dinner there, throughout which Lilian gets to know a few other people she hadn't talked to before, but most importantly, their little group gets together to eat dinner and they start discussing. Apparently, the family of Mark is looking for volunteers to protect the chapel that the coffin is in, so no one opens it and no one disturbs him, which immediately Virgilius is like, yeah, I wrote down all of the names of everyone in our group. We're gonna go there, we're gonna stand guard, but most importantly, we want to see who tries to get in there and who's interested. And also, I mean, we kind of also want to take a peek and get inside if we can, because the chapel doors were closed and we were standing guard outside of them, but we wanted to find a way to get in and also see if the coffin was empty or not, because that was pretty important to know if Mark is actually dead. So we all finish dinner and we go to the chapel to take guard places. Now, we tried to get in without a lot of success up until there is an ambush of the other very big political faction in Eternica. To give you a little bit of history on this, there's basically two big movements in Eternica right now, which was the people following and supporting Mark Onschuld, and they were called the Onschuldigen, or you could say the Innocents. And then opposite to that, you had the Ontelbaren, or the Countless, as you would say. Basically, they opposed Mark's reign and they were against everything he was doing and his family were doing. So at a certain point when we were guarding the chapel, there was an ambush of a bunch of Ontelbaren who try to get into the chapel. They do manage to. They open the door, a bunch of them get in. Eventually we do overpower them and a lot of them end up dying. We try to get one alive and they are dragged off somewhere else. Things calm down again. But good things that happened from this was the chapel door was now open. Everyone could go inside, and also the coffin lid was opened by one of these ambushers. So we had all the excuses to look around a little bit and sneak before anyone noticed. We went to that coffin, we looked inside very briefly, there was a corpse in there, and most importantly, there were a bunch of dead people around the chapel, which meant time to go looting the corpses. Lillian immediately crouched down next to one of the corpses and started reaching into their pockets. They first checked that they were actually dead because necromancer, it might be useful to know, but they started looting the pockets, and once she found that there was actually some stuff in there, she just looked around to see if anyone noticed her and went from corpse to corpse, scooching down, going into the pockets and getting all of the gold that she could get. She was, however, noticed by a certain person from the Church of Death called Constantine, and he basically looked at her, crouched over a corpse and said, "Hey, maybe do it a little bit more subtle next time." To which she was a little bit panicked and she just said, "I can split it with you." And he agreed. He was like, "Yeah, okay, that sounds good." So she just went around all of the corpses, and her alibi was that she was checking if they were actually dead or if we could still get one alive. But what do you know, they're all dead. And she got all the loot, but nobody needs to know that. After gathering her pockets full of gold, eventually people are pushed out of the chapel once more to seal the coffin lid and let peace return to Mark's dead life now. So we are ushered away to the inner courtyard once more, where another problem quickly arises for Lillian. So in Eternica, when you die, your soul is washed and you are reborn, but also at a certain point in your death, your body needs to serve the realm a little longer. They do this by literally bringing back your body from the dead by a necromancer and putting you to service. You're called a servant then, a servant of the realm. But in recent months, these servants have been disobeying their orders and kind of malfunctioning in a way that nobody really understands yet. So there was one of these servants walking around in the inner courtyard, and a master surgeon went to Lillian and basically said, "Hey, I want to investigate this servant. I want to see what's going on with them." Lillian was very interested in this because that was an ongoing issue where obviously necromancers had to help in some capacity. So she said that she would go ask her teacher for advice on this matter. She went to Jonathan, who was apparently at this point guarding the chapel as like a spirit himself, so he wouldn't be detected. And she went and asked, "Hey, you know, the servants have been malfunctioning. Do you know anything about that? Have you already looked into it?" Jonathan said that he had done extensive research already, but he had come up blank. He had no clue what was happening either, and he had already researched it extensively. So Lillian was like, "Okay, well, as just a student, what else could I do? Like, if you already looked into it, I don't know what I can still find that would be useful." But instead, someone else had asked her to join them on another mission, which was maybe more important and more interesting then. And Jonathan agreed. He said, "You need to make your own choices. I think you're making the right one, but you just do whatever you want, honestly." And Lillian was like, "Got it. Okay, I'll be doing that." So she goes outside and she meets up with the others who were going to go on the mission. Now, this other mission was a group of witches and a few followers of the Church of death, they were going to go to a place in the forest where they felt that there was a weakness in the veil. Now, the veil is basically what separates our world from the world of like the dead and the spirit. And usually this veil should be shut tight and there shouldn't be any issues. But in the past, there have been some issues now and then, and now they also felt that a point here in the area was weaker than others. So they had gathered a few people, and we were going to go find that point and try to maybe enter to the other side of the veil to see what was up. The group of us gathered, and as we started walking away, the master surgeon from before, who was going to investigate the servants, came running up, and he was like, "Where are you going? You need to be here right now to help me." And Lillian was just walking away and saying, "I'm so sorry, I'm more needed somewhere else." And she was making up excuses as she was drifting away, upon which the master surgeons said, "Your master will not be happy with this." I was a little bit terrified. Good play on him, but there was no choice anymore. I left and I went with the group on this mission. I forget to mention this later on in the video, but there was a great follow-up scene the next morning where Jonathan pretended to scold Lillian and be upset with her for not helping the master surgeon. He came up to her and said, "Just pretend I'm being very disappointed in you right now because the master surgeon is watching, even though I'm not actually." And Lillian had a great time bowing her head and playing along with it. The group kept walking up until a certain point where they found a well, and they felt that whatever feeling they had about the veil, it was coming from this well. So with a little bit of courage, they left a pitch black night sky and dove into the well. I will have you know, this was probably one of the most fun experiences Lillian has had that entire weekend. Swimming through that well and going through the obstacles that were behind it was thrilling, and she loved nothing more than just being a little bit adventurous. She had left her hometown exactly to experience things that she couldn't experience otherwise. As they got through the well and they got through some small corridors with some obstacles, they eventually landed in a laboratory. Specifically, it turned out to be a laboratory from a spherologist, who is someone who does illegal magics. They open portals to other worlds and they try to contact them, or they try to get creatures from other worlds. But we found a laboratory right there, and someone was doing this illegal type of magic and scientific experiments. We found a bunch of letters, documentations, and also an actual alive insectoid creature in a cage. And amongst all of this, there was also a giant gate which apparently had symbols on it. And with some documents lying next to it, it was clear that someone was trying to use this gate to go to other worlds to get creatures there. They were taking notes about the solutions that they had found so far, the symbol combinations that they had tried, and the worlds that they had reached. They were trying to find creatures and make an eternal life form out of them in this exact realm. It was all pretty scary, actually. From the letters that they found as well, it kind of felt like these letters were towards Marek, who had just died. And so it was pretty unsettling to know that the leader of Eternica was doing some very illegal shit here. Eventually, we try to take some of these letters with us, and out of pity, Lillian kills the insectoid creature because she doesn't think it deserves to just live in this cage, and they try to leave. However, as they do, all of the documents disappear from their hands and an alarm goes off. Oh boy. The alarm was constantly yelling thief as they ran away through the corridors of obstacles, back through the well, swimming all the way up until they were finally off in safety. They didn't manage to get any of the documents, but at least they were safe and out of there. So as they get back, Lillian is a bit upset, and she immediately goes to find Ra, who is the person she goes to for comfort. She tells him about what she found, and the two of them immediately agree that they should go find the rest of the group and tell them about this. They do find the rest of the group. There was a gathering of the other travelers and adventurers off into the woods somewhere quiet where not a lot of people could eavesdrop. As the conversation there dies down, Lillian and Ra leave with the rest of their group, but they are accompanied by someone else who shouldn't be accompanying them, namely a merchant called Arnold, and they leave the circle go around the corner a little bit further off into the dark forest, and Virgilius decides to knock Arnulf unconscious, after which they quickly pull an unconscious Arnulf into the bushes with them. So apparently Arnulf had been following the group for a little while now already, and he had been leaking information from the group to other people, and more specifically was putting a little bit of a bad light onto the group and making others suspicious that they were bad guys and they were together with Mark Onschuld, together with the onschuldigen or the innocents. That was bad PR, and apparently Arnulf was responsible for this. So the group started discussing, how do we solve this? Do we just kill him? No, we can't do that. People would notice. So the next best solution that Virgilius had was, let's pull him deeper into the forest with us and let's torture him, because that always turns out great. So we did, of course, a silly, innocent plan. We dragged Arnulf with us, pitch black. We couldn't turn on any of the lights because we didn't want to be seen, and we snuck past all of the other players to go deeper into the forest where we had recently found a stone slab table. Once we got there, we put Arnulf onto the table. A small note, if you want to do these kinds of scenes, please calibrate them with your fellow players beforehand. It makes the scene that much more safe and fun for everyone. And Virgilius started talking about the ways he was going to torture him to get information out of him. So we bind Arnulf to the table, and Lillian is a little bit unsure about this, but also this is about the safety of the group she really cares about. So we all have to take some moral decisions to protect the people we love. Arnulf starts waking up a little bit on the table, and we start asking him questions saying, hey buddy, it's really the best decision for you to not make a lot of noise right now, because if you make a lot of noise right now, it's going to be bad for you. He nods. We start asking a few questions about why he has been following us, but we are interrupted. Most specifically, we're interrupted by the cries of wolves around us, pretty close by. I'll have you know, there was a rumor that wolf attacks had been happening around the area in the past few weeks, and now we got to know if the rumors were true or not. Immediately, the first moment we heard a cry, everyone was like, shh, shut up, shut up, shut up, no more sound. And we turned down all of our lights until we were just surrounded by darkness, hearing wolf cries pretty close by. And it came to a point where even Arnulf, who was supposed to be tortured by us, was standing with us to defend and not knowing what was going on. And he also said that he was wrong and that there was a misunderstanding, and we're gonna talk about it later. We stood there, all back to back in a small circle. I have to stress how much we could not see anything. Lillian is not a combat person, so she was standing there next to some fighters with her staff held out in front of her as far as she could reach, thinking, if a wolf now shows up in front of me, I will not have seen it. And also, what the hell am I gonna do? I am a sorcerer. I don't do close combat, and I also cannot see anyone to put a spell on them, so I'm kind of fucked here in this situation. We stood there for 15 straight up minutes. We heard some more wolf cries and we saw movement, and we were all silent, just waiting. It was the most intense scene I had that entire weekend. At a certain point, we thought we were safe. And as we started talking to each other, we noticed, okay, I think we're in the clear. We waited long enough. We just said, let's get out of here. So we took Arnulf and we just booked it away from the forest. Again, without any lights on, it's a miracle none of us fell there. So we get back, and someone needs Ra for a political discussion. Apparently, two very big people in the opposite sides, again, the Onschuldigen and the Ontelbaren, apparently two people from those groups wanted to get together and talk. And I was like, bet, it seems interesting enough, I'll go and sit with you. We go up to a room and they have their discussion. Ra and Lillian went out of the room into the inner courtyard and found the rest of the group. A lot of the other adventurers thought that Lillian, Ra, and the rest of their group were siding with Mark Onschuld. They might be in danger if they didn't do anything to prove them wrong, because their heads might be next. So they needed to act right now. And they did. They did the only thing they thought they could do at that moment. They lured two very important people from the organization of the Onschuldigen away in the rouse of it being a ceremony for their religion. Little did they know that once they arrived at their little altar, they were both taken away from this life. Lillian was a little uncertain about the situation. I mean, murder is pretty extreme, but those were concerns for tomorrow, as she just took hold of Ra's hand and said, "Wherever it is that you go, I'll be with you." He will have some explaining to do the next day. And with that, Saturday began. The day began with the funeral ceremony for Mark. Basically, they were taking the coffin from the chapel, bringing it to the inner courtyard, and for people to be able to give speeches. As everyone gathered, Lillian sought out Ra and basically said, "You have some explaining to do. I may not know what is happening, and I may still support and follow you in all of it, but I would like to have some answers and know what I'm getting into a little bit. Doesn't change the fact that I will get into it with you, regardless of what it is, but you owe me some explanations." Ra said that first of all, there were assassins out for both him, Virgilius, and Ton, because apparently it was known that they had made some moves against the Onschuldigen, so now they were on a hit list. Hooray! We didn't have enough problems to worry about. Other than that, Ra explained that the reason they were thought to be working for the Onschuldigen is because for a while the group did have to do just that. Apparently, Hendrik was the person who had gotten Ton, Virgilius, and Ra out of prison, and in return for that favor, they now had to service and work for the family and the Onschuldigen as long as it was needed. But now Hendrik was no more, so the hierarchy of things was all over the place. They followed the coffin and they went into the inner courtyard where the ceremony started off, and at a certain point Virgilius started giving a speech. His speech, however, slowly started descending into anti-Mark things, and it was noticed because all of a sudden a bunch of guards rushed in, took hold of Virgilius as he was giving his speech, and dragged him away. I'll have you know, that was pretty epic to see, as he was still continuing to give his speech as they dragged him away with a bunch of guards. Of course, we saw this and we immediately went after them. As we arrive as fast as we could, we see that these guards have beaten Virgilius to a pulp, and he is on the ground breathing very heavily. We reach down, we immediately call for a doctor. Throughout this ceremony still going on like a few meters away from us, a doctor rushes in and starts checking up on Virgilius, who is coughing, spitting up blood. And this is a great time to once again remind you that this is all in game and no one was actually bleeding. And they check on him. His pulse is very weak. They are trying to heal him and make him stable again, but he is losing consciousness very, very fast. And Lillian was standing there next to him. She pulled out her notebook. She was frantically going through it to see if she could do anything, and she had a moment of realization where she was watching someone she cared for die and realized there was nothing she could do unless they were actually dead. As a necromancer, she wasn't able to heal them or help them in any other way. So she started crying, and the doctor said that his pulse had gone and he was dead. And Lillian was just crying. She held it out and she didn't know what to do. Luckily for them, after a second of panic and not knowing if Virgilius was actually dead, they managed to reanimate him. Thank the gods. As they did, and as Virgilius got back to us, he started rambling about the fact that he had seen the Styx, the river he was supposed to pass as his soul moved on, but he wasn't able to. He was dragged down into the sand. Something was stopping him. Constantine joined them at that moment, and he said that that was not incorrect. Apparently, for a while now, souls had been stopped from passing the Styx and not able to pass on to their next life, and Virgilius had just proven this exact point by telling about his experience. Constantine started talking about how this was another sign that the soul of the realm was corrupted and it was falling apart. Servants were misbehaving and malfunctioning. The veil had more weak spots than ever before. Something was terribly wrong, and they needed to find a way to investigate it and to fix it. A few quiet hours went by then, and at a certain point, Lillian was approached by Santa Azura again. Last night, they had a ceremony to seal off the door of Mark Onschuld's bedroom because it was tradition. Apparently, doing that and keeping that door sealed for a very long time meant that his soul could rest inside. This should ring some bells, because immediately Lillian was like, so how symbolic is it that his soul is literally behind that door? Of course, Santa Azura said it was symbolical, and even if it wasn't, thus the better, because he was then there peacefully resting for the rest of time. And Lillian thought, we can't have that now, can we? We can't have that door locked like that. She got to planning and scouting. Apparently, there were 3 locks on the door who all needed different people to open them. So she got some people together, got the combination of one of the locks herself, and at a certain point with another sorcerer called Yvonne, they both became invisible and they went to the door to try and open it themselves without anyone seeing, because there was surveillance now and then by Santa Azura and two of her sisters. So if you were caught, it was not good for you. It didn't take them too long to figure out how to open all 3 locks, and they got Ra there as well with them to see if they needed physical backup for anything, because they were both sorcerers. They didn't know what was behind the door. As they went upstairs, all 3 of them visible now, they started opening all 3 of the locks until a sister went into the hallway and asked what they were up to. Lillian started panicking a little bit as the sister came closer, and Ra was trying to bumble his way out of an explanation until she reached into her bag and found a small vial of yellow sand with which Lillian could make someone fall asleep. She immediately reached out for the vial, looked at Yvonne, who was just nodding her head saying, yes, that's a good idea, and she put it around the sister's feet and made her take a little nap right there, right then. They had 15 minutes now to get inside of the room, find whatever it was they needed to find there, and get the hell out of there before she woke up. So they did. They scrambled into the room, took everything they could that was of value, and they also saw a suit of armor there. Yvonne quickly investigated it, and apparently it did have some kind of spherologist magic on it, and we later found out the soul of Marek was actually in that suit of armor. As we left, we were already pretty far away before we realized, shit, if this sister wakes up, she will have seen us and she will go tell people immediately. So we solved that by getting some people to help us erase her memories permanently. I do have to say, we covered our tracks pretty good there, and I'm very proud of it. We got away with the treasure and we divided it amongst the 3 of us, but also, most importantly, Lillian took all of the healing ingredients that she could find to the healers who had helped bring Virgilius back, and she gave it to them as an offer of good faith, and basically begging them that in the future, if they needed healing again, they would help them by giving these free ingredients. You would think that's already enough action, but no. You would be wrong, because after about an hour more of just relaxed sitting down and hearing everything that was going on, Lillian was approached by her friend Callista, who is a witch, and she basically asked, hey, we're gonna do a ritual. Wanna join in? Any sane person would say yes to that. So that's exactly what Lillian did. She was like, hell yeah, I love being around the witches. Let's go do a ritual. As they walked there and as they started making a circle, they were apparently going to call back a spirit from a dead male witch. And oh boy, I did not expect that, because I'll tell you a little story. 2 years ago, when Lillian made her first appearance, she had helped solve a very big problem. And in solving that very big problem, she had worked together with a male witch called Vincent. He had died protecting the realm and solving that problem right there. And Lillian had been right there with him when he sighed his last breath and left this world. So hearing that he was going to be brought back was pretty exciting actually, and not something she had expected. However, there's one more thing you should know. I told you before that Ton, Ra, and Lillian share a religion. Well, this religion is all about spirits. They don't believe that there is just one big god, but they believe that there are so many aspects of godliness and of men themselves that there are multiple spirits that they can worship, all with their unique story, their unique capabilities, and their unique guidance and perspective on things. So when they worship these spirits, they are often called to one more than the other. And Lillian had found a bond with a spirit of a little girl who loved to play games and gave big rewards if you played those games with her. But if you played with her during the night, things got very dangerous. And throughout her travels, Lillian had bonded with this girl because she gave Lillian this kind of adventurous spirit that she did not have before. And because Lillian got possessed by this little girl a lot, she took on characteristics herself without knowing it. One of these characteristics was looking at Ra as a big brother, because Lillian is not family of Ra, but Petit Ada looks at Ra as a big brother. So during this witch's ritual to bring back Vincent, they had to open up the veil between worlds for a small while, which meant that it was easier for Petit Ada to possess Lillian in that moment. And that's exactly what happened. Lillian got possessed there for a little while, and as monsters started coming out from the veil to attack them, she forgot that she was a sorcerer for a second and just ran at those monsters with her staff, beating the ever-loving shit out of them and asking them if they wanted to play a game. So it was quite a nice reunion when they got Vincent back, and he also recognized Lillian still, and more specifically, Lillian possessed by Petit Ada, because they had played together before, and Vincent had promised to play a game again in the future, which Petit Ada had not forgotten. As the ritual ended, Callista took the still possessed Lillian's hand and brought her back to Ra, who then helped her get unpossessed again, luckily. As Ra and Lillian returned from their shrine to the spirits once again, Lillian found out that Renate, the representative of the Ontelbaren, had been killed. A lot of people were very upset about it, and through Lillian's help as a necromancer, they managed to bring back Renate's soul to ask a few questions, namely who had done this to her. It turned out that Santa Azura was behind it, and that was a moment where a lot of mayhem happened. Everyone went after Santa Azura and all of the rest of the Onschuldigen there, and there was definitely a revolt. This would have consequences in the future, and these actions taken today would have repercussions. With all of this uncertainty and with this revolt happening, there is going to be a battle nearby very soon, which they had to prepare for, because a lot of neighboring armies were encroaching on their exact location, wanting revenge for things, but also the death of Mark made it a perfect moment to strike. Lillian and Ra took a moment to sit down with their group and basically relax for a second. She hugged Ra close and said that he shouldn't get into any danger during the fight or she would find him. And Ton also gave Lillian a very nice gift at that moment. He gave her flowers. Now, granted, these were flowers that were once put on the grave of Mark Onschuld, but he gave them to her as a sign and a question of whether or not Ton could actually start looking at Lillian as family. In that moment, Lillian looked at the entire group and she knew that in this battle to come, she was going to do no matter what to make sure that they were safe and they got out of it alive. Yes, even as a necromancer, she had that opinion. The battle was insanely impressive. I'll tell you right now, we were on this huge battlefield where there were other armies waiting to attack us and each other actually, and it was very frantic. Lillian mainly stuck by the healers to protect them if anyone came too close by, because she could cast protective barriers around them. As the fight went on though, the backline became a little bit too boring for Lillian, so luckily another fighter called Gunther was willing to take her into the battlefield and up to the front lines, which she was all for, because that was way more adventurous than staying in the back and protecting people. They went up to the front lines, and there was a last barricade of generals who were protecting the last camp still standing. As the final battle started, Lillian tried to help by blasting spells at a general, but the general had some kind of magical armor because he got to negate her spells. She was pretty pissed about this. Luckily though, she has some very good friends, and they pulled him out of the formation and started stabbing this general. Lillian gladly joined, and she whispered to him, "Negate this," as she stomped in his head. It was a very good win that day for Lillian. Once the treasure of the battle was divided and once the wounded were healed, there were some last things to be done that day. Namely, there was going to be a funeral ceremony for Renate as well. Everyone gathered in the little sanctuary of the Church of Death, who were very close friends with Renate, and they gave this lovely last ceremony surrounded by moonlight. Lillian and a lot of other people went up and shared their experiences with Renate. Lillian had been very happy to know Renate because, well, Lillian's religion and belief in the spirits is not easily accepted in Eternica. It's not one of the big 7 religions that people follow, so some people might look upon it weirdly, but Renate never did. She was very accepting, and also when Lillian was possessed, Renate was the first person to help. She was sad that this person was gone now. To close off the evening, Virgilius, Ra, and Lillian decided to have one last ceremony to worship the spirits before they left this town to travel further. But as they did though, there were some revelations. In the past few weeks, Virgilius had been haunted by a spirit. We've all thought it to be the spirit of a wolf, a devourer, who was threatening to devour our whole world. And as the spirit had been trying to contact Virgilius specifically, he had slowly been driving Virgilius mad. We all thought we had it figured out and knew what spirit was talking to Virgilius, but we were wrong. As we did our ceremony and each individually worshipped our spirits, with Lillian saying a little prayer to Petit Ada for her help and her adventurous spirit, it was up to Virgilius to worship, and he started talking to this wolf devourer spirit, but it wasn't him that was talking to Virgilius. Apparently, it was another spirit. You have to know, that, Ra also has his preferred spirit to worship, namely Madame Mystère. She is a powerful mystic spirit who is a little bit of a girl boss, I will admit. I admire her. But she had been gone for a very long time now, and no one had been able to contact her. She didn't show up when you worshipped her, and she didn't speak to you. And that had made Ra pretty upset in the past, because he worshipped her. And when I say worship here, I mean he's also deeply devoted to and in love with her. He wanted to know what was wrong and why she didn't answer him. We found out exactly why, because apparently all this time, Madame Mystère had been talking to Virgilius, and it had not been the wolf. Apparently, however, the wolf, the devourer, had found Madame Mystère and she was in danger. And if we did not stop him, he would eat her and he would eat the entirety of the realm. You can imagine that Ra got pretty upset knowing that she had been contacting Virgilius and not him, the one who worshipped her. But as we got over these revelations, we tried to calm down Virgilius, who was very upset and very out of it at that moment. We managed to get Virgilius back inside, but Lillian stopped with Ra for a second there, outside next to their altar to the spirit. And in that moment, she hugged Ra and said, "You do not deserve this." As tears rolled down her face, she truly believed that he deserved better in that moment. But he had made his decision to worship her and he would stick through it. So, wiping away the tears from her cheeks, Lillian had made up her mind that she was pissed at Madame Mystère. She was pissed at the spirits, but she was going to channel that energy to help Ra find her. They knew their next task now. With a few more answers than they had previously, they were going to have to try and find a way to go through the veil and to find these spirits, and more specifically Madame Mystère, to rescue her before it was too late. But also, maybe this was all linked to the soul of the realm falling apart. Maybe this was a piece in that puzzle and a role that they had to play in trying to save the soul of this realm. But those answers wouldn't be coming to them right now. And that is where the evening ended for Lillian and all of the others in the group. And there we go. That was the story of Lillian throughout this Epos weekend. It was a heavy one. A lot of very intense moments, a lot of very emotional moments, seeing friends dying or knowing they were forsaken. But it was so nice, and I cannot wait to continue Lillian's story once more, probably next year. So thank you for sticking through this story time. I really appreciate you listening to the stories I want to share about these amazing experiences. If you like this video, be sure to keep an eye on my channel. I'll be doing a bunch more LARP story times when I experience them. But until then, stay safe and I'll see you next time.